We entered this new month with this new theme of spiritual living and everyday wonder. And this month, we're going to talk about our bodies all month long. So if you've been here even for a short time, you know that I call our bodies magic suits. These are our magic suits. And we talked about that in Sacred Cup this morning, like, why do I do that? Why do I call it a magic suit? And there were lots of good ideas in the room. They were great thoughts. But I do that. I call it that so that I can try to separate you from identifying as your body. You are not your body. You have a body. And so I call it a magic suit to help us remember that our true identity is the spirit that breathed into this magic suit on the day we were born. And we will be that same spirit when we exit our magic suit and take our spirit to another plane. So to open up this month of body talk, I want to start with some spiritual truth about our journeys inside our magic suits. And I want to start with birth and end in death. I want to touch on some truth that happens along the way too. So birth. Birth is a great moment, isn't it? Birth is a great moment. Now, I don't personally know anyone who remembers their birth, but I know that there are some people who claim to have memories of being born. That being said, I don't know about that, but most of us have thoughts about birth because we've either given birth or we've witnessed someone or perhaps an animal giving birth. And we, as human beings, we love birth. We love it. In the middle of this very physical, messy process, there's this powerful moment when that first breath is taken, and we realize that a new story is beginning. And if you've ever been in the room for a birth, you know that it's a very emotional moment, and almost everybody who's in the room will cry because it's so emotional. It's a spirit-filled moment. Most people in the room cry. I understand even doctors and nurses and midwives and things that are there a lot will often have tears at that very moment because a new story is beginning. Something new is happening. Not only for the infant, right? That's a new story, but everybody involved in that birth has a new story. It's never going to be quite the same after that moment. And at that moment, our lessons about our magic suits begin. Because parents and caregivers and society as a whole teach us about our bodies and our relationship with them. So we're taught so many things, aren't we? So some of us are taught that hunger and thirst are to be attended to, while others are taught to ignore them. Some are taught that pain is a cause for great alarm, and others are taught that pain is just a part of living and it must be tolerated. Some of us are taught that our body is sacred and to be revered, and others of us are taught that our body is shameful and it should be hidden. Some are taught that their body is beautiful in every way, and some of us are taught that our body's not quite right and should be changed in some way. Some are encouraged to be athletic and powerful and move their bodies, and others are discouraged to play games and develop their physical selves. Some are taught how to paint their bodies and make them more beautiful, and others are taught to keep their body very natural. Some are taught that their skin and their hair is beautiful, and others are taught that their skin and their hair are sources of shame and a curse. Some are taught to honor their sexuality of the body, and others are shamed about sexual curiosity and impulses. So basically, some of us are taught to love our bodies, and some of us are taught to despise or fix our bodies. So here's the thing. Almost all of these lessons about our magic suits are not learned in some formal educational way. Some of us may have had a class called health, and that's just about it, right? But instead, we learn these lessons through these subtle cues, these tiny, ambiguous little comments or looks that inform us whether or not we are conforming to expectations about our body. Siblings interpret the messages that they get from parents very differently about the magic suit, and sometimes an entire community or a culture picks up common messages about the body. And don't forget, we have this collective human race experience and beliefs about the body. And guess what? Some of these body messages come from religion, passed along generation to generation as tradition and culture. Actually, there are very few religious teachings that do not touch the rules about the magic suit. How to dress it, how to adorn it, how to use it, how to procreate with it, birth it, dye it, and everything in between. Diet, not diet, but... And there are lots of ideas about what is good and bad. I'm just exhausted just listing all the things that we've learned, right? I sure wish I had found spirituality when I was much younger so I didn't have to unlearn so many things, right? So what I've learned about the truth, about the body that I want to share with you, and I want to remind you and ask you to consider some things. And it's going to take a month of lessons, to do this. But the very first basic spiritual principle is that our bodies are magnificent. They're magnificent. Our bodies are a gift to be appreciated and loved. They're a gift. That's the first gift we were given. The body you have right here and right now, this one, is an expression of God. Another word for expression is form. And I asked Randy to bring in a reading from Ernest Holmes so we could hear the philosophy about the body. So the body is a form, and it's a form that expresses God or life in an individual way. And every cell in your body is guided by an intelligence that calls forth balance and order to sustain the body, the life of the body. And there's a higher purpose of every element in your body. And that highest purpose is to sustain life, the life of you. So the divine intelligence that lives in your body is life itself. If you just take a moment, you can feel a buzzing in your fingertips. It's an energy that you can see under a microscope kind of pulsing as life. And it's an energy form that your individual consciousness can use as a conduit to experience the world on this human plane. So life itself inhabits your magic suit and your personality and your mind and your emotions. They use all of that to experience life. But most importantly, the energy, that field, your body's an energy field, and it is a part of the universal energy field of the all. So you're a part of everything. So all bodies are good bodies. And by loving the body, we can use it to connect our minds and our hearts. And we can listen to its wisdom. We can celebrate the magnificence and awaken to this everyday wonder that we walk around in every day. We engage in a spirituality that celebrates the body and encourages full engagement and participation with this body, an appreciation of it. So we may have been taught, I think a lot of us were taught, that our bodies are not acceptable for one reason or another, right? We could make the list. We're too fat, too thin, too short, too tall, too brown, too black, too white, too disabled or broken, just too much of this or too little of that, too one thing or another. And we may have spent our entire lifetimes up until this moment holding our bodies against some ideal in comparison. We may have been feeding a message to our body that it isn't acceptable just as it is. And this is an invitation to stop doing that. Because I always say what? No matter what the question, what is the answer? Love. Love is the answer. No matter what the question is, love is the answer. And this is no exception. Because by learning to love our bodies just the way they are, we're open to the opportunity to heal the wounds of our childhood experiences, our conditioning, to heal the wounds and traumas that cause us to hide our physical selves. By learning to love and appreciate our own magic suit without judging it, without pushing it away energetically in rejection, We open ourselves up to the opportunity to receive insight and wisdom from them in pretty miraculous ways. So spiritually, we know that every single thing in the universe is part of the one, and it's necessary to complete the whole, the balance, the perfect. Everything that's going on in this particular moment is part of the wholeness of this moment, the intelligence of this moment. And it takes everything that exists, including our bodies, to be whole and balanced and perfect in this moment. Everything exists because life needs it to exist. And because when things are no longer needed, they cease to exist. So your body is a part of the divine intelligent pattern of everything. Ernest Holmes says, our body is part of the kingdom of God. Therefore, there is a spiritual pattern at the center of it. Your body is just as important as any other life form in existence. And it's unique and it's beautiful and perfect just the way it is. Because the one mind saw fit to create these things in a wide variety of differences, right? Think of the different varieties of flowers or animals. Think about that for a second. No one of them is better than another one. They serve different purposes. We would never compare two plants of different species and say this one is better than another. They're just different. So declaring one physical form is better than another, it just doesn't make sense. Everything exists so that the divine can express in a variety of ways. So what would happen to your self-esteem? What would happen to your self-esteem if you accepted your body just exactly the way it is? What would happen? How would your life change if you eliminated any self-messaging that your body is deficient or damaged or unacceptable in some way? Because you are deserving of a harmonious relationship with your body. You are deserving of your own love. Your body is deserving of your own love. But that's kind of the message about everything in spirituality, right? Everything deserves to be loved. Love and more love. But it doesn't make sense to separate our own individual self out of the equation and say somehow it's unlovable, but everyone going to love and appreciate everything else, right? Spiritual practice applies to your body too. And I said this in Sacred Cup. I don't know anyone who fully loves and accepts their physical body without spiritual practice. I don't know anybody. The tendency we have is to focus on the aspects of our body that do not please us in some way. And it's a hard thought habit to break. Very hard habit to break. So even if you're not holding your body accountable to some unreasonable beauty standard right this minute, we often have a pattern of damaging our bodies through storing unexpressed and stuck emotions, stress, and traumas in our bodies. Bessel van der Kolk, and she wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And she wrote, the greatest source of our suffering are the lies we tell ourselves. The lies we tell ourselves. Because when we have unhealed emotional and psychological wounds, we are not at ease. So what does that say? Dis-ease. When we are not at ease, we are at dis-ease. And disease is the way that our bodies show us that we have some self-healing work to do. One of my teachers explained it this way. He said it's like we're going through life with a windshield in front of us. And as we hit stressors and challenges in our lives, those things hit our windshield. They block our vision, and we can't see life clearly. We can't navigate very well with all this stuff on our windshields. So sometimes when the things that are hitting us are so vast, they get our windshields all dirty, and if we don't get the help we need, and we don't deal with the reality of these challenges, what we do instead is we take them off our windshield and we put them in our bodies. We store them in our bodies in different ways. It's like we energetically take this dirty stuff or hard stuff. We're like, I'll deal with it later. I need to keep going. So I need to take it off my windshield so I can keep going. And over the years, we just keep taking things off the windshield, and storing them in our bodies. And let's remember that collective trauma can also hit our windshields. Things that the entire human race or large masses of people experience, they can also get stored in our bodies. Large masses of people can experience this anguish from experiences that they have. And our bodies try to get our attention, to get us to stop allowing stuff to get stored in it. We get infections, we get headaches, we get congestion, stiffness, pain, just little sickness and physical complaints, right? And sometimes our bodies get misshapen and our metabolism goes haywire. And we look for pills and treatments and ointments and remedies trying to ease the dis-ease. We try to deal with the physical self, but so often we neglect treatment for that emotional and spiritual distress that has us storing stuff in our bodies to begin with. And I want to just say, it's not somehow anti-spiritual to tend to the needs of the body, including the use of medicines. And we use medicine so that we can let our bodies rest. Our bodies have to rest. You know, our founder was often questioned because the New Thought movement came out of the healing movement. And he was often questioned about the use of medicine and treatments for healing. And he said this: since we cannot walk on water, we take a boat or an aspirin. So Ernest Holmes really believed that God was in all the treatments. God was the wisdom of everything. So in order to live harmoniously with our bodies, we've got to listen to them. And by listening to them, we're going to likely find that their discomfort eases. Once they no longer have to shout through pain to be heard, they can share with us this deep divine wisdom and intuition. You know, don't you know people that have just kind of become transfixed with their physical bodies? I know Terry does. She does that work for a living. She works with people that are just really, really focused on their bodies. And they become hypochondriacal, right? And begin to live this life in an intense relationship with their physical form, never addressing their minds, hearts, and souls. They're just addressing the physical body. And sometimes their physical form becomes so weakened and distressed by all of this that even when they do turn to more holistic healing, sometimes the body never fully recovers. And we talk about healing a lot around here all the time. And if you're experiencing physical challenges, you may wonder about that word healing. Healing is a revealing of wholeness. So what I want to say is that sometimes when you're in a healing situation, more wholeness is being revealed. So if you have a physical healing, wholeness has returned to be revealed by your body. If you have an emotional healing, wholeness and balance have been revealed again in your heart. If you have a mental healing, your mind is thinking again in a whole way. If you have a spiritual healing, you've remembered your spiritual wholeness. That's been waiting for you to remember it the whole time. And always remember, emotional and mental and spiritual wholeness can occur, and there can be a healing on those levels regardless of the expression of the physical form. Because what did I teach last week? I said we've got to remember the impermanence of form. We talked a lot about that. Impermanence is part of the human experience on this plane. Therefore, decline and death and decay are simply a part of the impermanence of this human magic suit. And we can have all kinds of emotions about that, right? Most people have all kinds of fear about death. So right here in this first lesson about the body, I want to talk about death. Okay, so we talked about birth earlier, so let's take a moment to talk about death. Because birth is the spirit moving into the body, and death is the spirit moving out of the body, out of the magic suit. And both of those moments are holy moments. Emotional moments, spiritual moments, and physical moments. And they are moments full of mystery and meaning. And somehow our souls know how to be born and our souls know how to die. One thing I like to gently remind people when they have a loved one who is dying or has died is that the person's soul is in charge. Their soul's in charge. I truly believe that death is not some horrible, bad thing. I truly believe that. But it's an important part of life that has been lived, and that is just as an important moment as any other pivotal moment along the way. And I believe that the individual soul has something to say about how the death experience is for them. I believe that. And I know that there are many, many, many ways to die, right? Many situations to die in, many times of life to die. And I read in a book somewhere that whatever you're doing, someone has died doing that. That's a sobering thought, right? Don't mean to send you home with that, but it really is. So let's talk about it. You know, sometimes death occurs suddenly, all at once, right? The body and the mind and the personality seem to stop functioning kind of simultaneously as a result of an accident or a physical trauma or something going wrong in the body, and the body is just suddenly unable to sustain life in that moment. Now, as human beings, those are not the kind of deaths we like, right? We don't like those. They should not have happened. We often say that shouldn't have happened. And the emotions of anger and sadness that we talked about last week can easily turn into that shame and blame game at that moment. And it's challenging spiritual work to accept a loved one's death if it occurs this way so unexpectedly. It's one of the biggest life lessons of learning that we can have. But I also think it's interesting that if that sudden thing happens when everybody's asleep, then it's okay, right? So it's just, we have lots of things that we think about death. And then at other times, death is more gradual. Usually due to a disease kind of playing itself out, but sometimes the mental capacity of a person dies first, right? And the body just keeps functioning physically long after the mental is kind of gone. And other times the body gives out physically while the mind stays sharp, right? Isn't that an interesting thing? And other times disease will take away the personality first, twisting the mental life until it's unrecognizable, and the body doesn't seem to contain the same person that it used to contain. So gradual deaths are sometimes easier to accept because we could see it coming, and we may have had time to process it and grapple with our emotions slowly. But if you're typical, our human selves really do not like death. But our spiritual selves, spiritually we understand it. Death is not wrong. Death is human. Death is natural. Death is normal. Death is holy. Death is simply a graduation of the soul from this school of life. But what death is that human beings don't like is that death is change. Just like birth is the beginning of a new story, death is the beginning of a new story, not only for everyone experiencing the person's death, but for that soul too. When the energy of life moves out of this body, science says you can never destroy energy. So we know that it goes on, it can't be destroyed. And none of us knows the mystery of what's next. We don't know that. But all of us can make peace with that happening, or when it happens, or as it happens. So releasing the need to judge the timing, reason, and cause of death is one of the biggest pieces of spiritual work that we will ever do. But the most important thing to remember is that when things don't make common human sense, they must make spiritual sense. And death makes spiritual sense because birth makes spiritual sense. So some of the most transformational work we can do for ourselves is to come to a more spiritual relationship with our bodies and every experience that the body has. So take the time to appreciate the wonder of your magic suit, the intelligence of it, the beauty of it, the wholeness of it. Practice non-judgment of your own body and the bodies of others. And navigate your way all the way to acceptance of all physical forms as they are. Contemplate the wisdom that birth and death are both magical moments of transformation. Movement from one form to another is transformation. Make peace with the impermanence of the human forms that we surround ourselves with. And I want to close today with a little story of body transformation. See if this hits with you. It's called The Dragonfly. Once in a little pond in the muddy water under the lily pads, there lived a little community of water beetles. They lived a simple and comfortable life in the pond with few disturbances and interruptions. Once in a while, sadness would come to the community when one of their fellow beetles would climb the stem of the lily pad and would never be seen again. They knew that when this happened, their friend was dead, gone forever. And then one day, one little water beetle felt an irresistible urge to climb up the stem. However, he was determined that he would not leave forever. He would come back and tell his friends what he found at the top of that stem. And when he reached the top and climbed out of the water onto the surface of the lily pad, he was so tired and the sun was so warm, so he decided he just had to take a nap. And as he slept, his body transformed. And when he woke up, he was no longer a water beetle, but instead a beautiful blue-tailed dragonfly with broad wings and a slender body designed for flying. So fly he did. And as he soared high, he saw the beauty of a whole new world in a far superior way of life than what he had ever known had existed. And then he remembered his water beetle friends and how they were thinking by now that he must be dead. And he wanted to go back to them and to explain to them that he was more alive than he had ever been before. His life had been fulfilled rather than ended. But his new body would not go down into the water. He could not get back to tell his friends the good news. And then he understood that their time would come, that they too would know what he now knew. So he raised his wings and he flew off into his joyous new life, a transformation. Will you pray with me? Here's what I know. As I take that breath into my physical magic suit, I remember that it is a holy breath, that this body that I occupy is perfect in every way. It expresses my consciousness. And I know that is the truth of me, and I know that's the truth of everyone hearing this lesson this morning. Each one of us lives inside a divine, intelligent body given to us to interact on this human plane. And so I know for each one of us an awakening to that magnificence of the human body and all the experiences that it has. And I call forth an awareness that death and birth are basically the same thing in just a different movement of transformation. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to worry about. It is simply natural, and it is divine as well. And so with that sense of peace that rests inside of us, we go forward in a new awareness this morning about the magic of this physical body and the gift that God has given each one of us. And we are forever transformed by this knowledge. And so it is.